wrote a thesis on Kant or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But they have the line of thought that's laid the foundation for anti-American, anti-the West. And of course, one of the major thinker was this guy, Jose Carlos Maria Tenqui, okay? And he related to the Communist Party at that time. And all these things, you know, it's disappeared. Nobody care about it any longer. And the Chinese path eventually was suppressed. And in 1992, they were arrested, and I don't know what happened to Abel Guzman at the moment, because I never, oh, probably he's still alive, I don't know. Yeah, he's still alive. And the Chinese part is probably one of the last. Another one that you might be the revolutionary movement, not in the Marxist sense, is this that used to be very famous, the Subcomandante Marcos. And this guy is so funny because he also got a degree in philosophy from Mexican University, and he used to teach there, and then he turned into a kind of a liberation movement. Subcomandante Marcos, and you can see his image. This is very famous because they center around the Chiapas in the southern part of Mexico, and they used to challenge the central government quite a lot, because Chiapas is this one. Sorry if you don't know about. Is this the place that they have this it's called Palenque, and you can see that it's right next to Guatemala. Okay, so this is in the south, and they have a kind of a separatist movement, but eventually it was fell. Okay, and this is probably one of the most famous Mayan ruin in the world. Okay, this is in Chiapas, and so the idea of anti-American, anti-West, anti-European is so strong in Latin America, and of course in Africa as well. And in Asia, particularly in Thailand, I don't think that we are that strong compared with Latin America. And Abel Quijano was one of them, but he's not a radical in the sense of the Maoist. Okay, and one of his powerful idea is this one, the chronality of power, which he trying to show that we are trapped in the colonial world, even though the colonialism was gone. Okay, and because all the structure of the West has been expanded since the time of the expansion of Europe. So his idea is relied on the concept like modernity. Okay. Which is related to the idea of modernization that I mentioned to you a couple of times in our lecture. And the modernization theory has influenced Thailand a lot, especially those who went to study abroad during the 60s, 70s, okay? And this is the generation that we can call the early boomer. For example, this man who used to be the dean at our faculty. You should, Ajahn Tirabekin, okay? And these political scientists of that generation, they had been, he died 2 years ago, okay? No, not 2 years ago, 4 years ago, sorry. He used to be the dean of this faculty, and he's one of the major proponent of, modernization theory, okay? Another person is this one, who's at Faculty of Political Science. He used to be the dean of Faculty of Political Science and used to be the judge of the Constitutional Court long time ago. And of course, this one as well. Okay, Chayanan Samutawanit, okay, who's playing an important role for 1997 constitutional, 1997 constitution, okay. All of them have gone up with the idea of modernization, but according to Annabelle Kijono, modernity cannot be separated from coloniality. Okay. Why? Because this is the time that Europe expand, especially since the expand since the late 15th century. That was the year that the New World was discovered by Christopher Columbus, 1492. And after that, Europe decided to divide the world among themselves. Through this treaty, which I think I mentioned it to you probably last semester. I don't know whether you remember. It's called Treaty of Tordesillas, divided the world between Spain and Portugal, okay? And since then, the process of colonization was strongly established itself in Latin America, to Spain and to Portugal. The Spanish and the Portuguese played an important role, and they started to change everybody to the process of, for example, the first thing what they did is by conversion, Christian conversion. So when you talk about Christian conversion, one thing that you have to keep this in mind is that the expansion of the empire And the European Empire in particular, you cannot avoid this thing. There's many books that mention about this thing, and you can find it anywhere. Uh, so Christianity is the big spearhead to convert people all over the world. Of course, in Asia, it's quite different. Why? Because Asia, Asia have uh, already have their own religion for a certain period of time. For example, Buddhism, Hinduism, or even that in the Middle East you have Islam, who was that was a major opponent of Christianity. Okay, and therefore in Latin America, Christianity, the whole Latin America or the whole of American continent has been Christianized. And of course, all of this cannot be separated from European expansion. So for Annabelle Quijano or for people in Latin America, they never think about themselves being separated from the West. Okay, they cannot think uh, about themselves in like Asian, Asian, we think it's different. We think that we are different. That's why we have something like, probably you heard of this, by Rudyard Kipling, is east, west is west. This is the Ballad of the East and the by Rudyard Kipling. I don't know whether you heard of him, but he's a very well-known writer. Okay, and of course, he's part of the empire, part of the, what you call the colonial time. And one of his famous book is this one, The Jungle Book. Okay, but in Latin America, it's different. Okay, Latin America have different concept about themselves because first of all, they are Catholic. Of course, at the moment, there's more Protestant. But in the past 400 years, 400 something years, they have been Christianized to Catholicism. And another important thing is that all of them have to speak either English, French, and of course in Latin America, they speak Spanish. Except in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. That's why for them, it's really very difficult it's very difficult for them to think that there are separated entity. So for them, Latin America is not Latin America. It's different from east is west is west. It's the balance of Rudyard Kipling. Okay, and undoubtedly, one of the early generation after the Second World War. In fact, it was before that. It was in fact before that. I'm going to want to talk about it. For example, they have a strong reaction against European oh, I would say this is one of them, in by the time that, we're trying to be scientific, okay? By the time that we're trying to be scientific, the Latin American moved toward another direction. That's why, for me, I think that Latin American writing is completely different from what we have after the First World War, okay? They completely rejected all this scientific thinking, all this realism, okay? That's why they have this concept of magical realism eventually, okay? So the reaction that they want to go against Europe has been around. I mean, you can even trace back even further, but I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about what happened after the Second World War, okay? And Annabelle Quijano has been on this track, like most of the intellectual in Latin America. They have a kind of ambivalent relationship between Latin, being themselves and European, okay? Particularly, I mean, either in Paris or in Madrid, okay? After the Second World War, okay, the UN has this one. Okay. United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, okay, or they call it ELAC, or whatever, okay, it was established in 1948, okay. And then this Economic Commission produced one interesting guy who tend to be forgotten, especially in Thailand. His name is Lau Prabish. Okay. Of course, in Thailand, unfortunately, he's not that well known because, as I said, we had been dominated by English-speaking people. Okay. He's the one who produced this concept, the concept of center and periphery. Center is mean like America, Europe, they suck all of the resources for themselves, and then they like let all the periphery die, something like that. I put it this way. And this related to one of the most important concepts in economic history is called Prebisch and Singer hypothesis. Singer is not Latin America because I think he's a British, but he was nationalized British. He's come from Eastern Europe, I think. I'm not sure. Yeah, he was German Jew. Okay, I don't know about his work that much. Anyway, so eventually this concept lead to one of the most important concepts that has been produced by Latin American countries that go against the development theory and particularly the neoclassic model of economy, classical model, neoclassic model of economy. Okay, that's what they call dependency theory. Okay, as you hear all the time that the people in the West, people in the capitalist world of the center in Europe, they leave Latin America, South Asia, Middle East, and Africa in poverty. Okay, in poverty. Okay, and a lot of Latin American people at that time, during the 50s, 60s, all the way up to the 70s. Okay, they rely on this concept, and this dependency or dependencia was a very popular concept, and it started with the work of Lau Prebisch. And of course, the work of Lau Prebisch, in the end, it was developed by the American, developed further by the American in the 70s. Who just died last year, Emmanuel Wallerstein. Okay, he's a world-renowned sociologist and economic historian. And of course, this is what they call the world system theory. This is branched off in America. And in Thailand, this theory seemed to be so popular because, as I said, because we have been trained in English-speaking country. You see the idea of core country, semi-periphery, and periphery. Okay. And as I said, nobody talk about Lau Prebisch in Thailand. Okay. And we pay attention more to Emmanuel Wallerstein. Apart from Lau Prebisch and many others, Prebisch, now we come back to Latin America. One of the most important, dependencia theory or dependency theory is this guy. At that time, during the 70s, we just call him Cardoso. And you see the Cardoso dependency in Brazil, but Cardoso was probably one of the most successful scholar intellectual in Latin America, or probably one of the last kind in the world, because he became the 34th president of Brazil between 1995 to 2002. Okay, and of course, he's a world-renowned scholar, and he got a lot of award and many doctoral and honorary degree and so on and so forth. And of course, Cardoso and this guy wrote one book that's become the Bible of the 60s and 70s. And so Faleto, unfortunately, you see that it doesn't have the English. Okay, and so Faleto they wrote this book together. This is the book. Of course, this is the Bible, okay? The Bible, I would say, is the Bible of the dependency theory. The Bible for those who study developmental studies in the 80s. Of course, this book was published in Spanish in 1969, and 10 years later, it was published in English in 1979. During the 80s, and this is a compulsory reading books among people who are interested in political economy, developmental studies, so on and so forth. Political scientists, sociologists. Okay. Apart from this, apart from Ferrato, there's also another guy who is a sociologist. It's this guy. Okay. Marini is also an economist and sociologist. You see one thing, sociologists, all of these people whom I was mainly talking about, they are sociologists. Why? Because sociology is a product of modern world in the late 19th century. And they are different from political science because they are much more radical, because their idea was based on Marx or Max Weber. Okay. And you see all this happen in Latin America. And of course, comparing between sociologists, this is a very blunt statement, very, very crude statement. But sociologists, they tend to be more radical than political scientists or even economists, okay, to some extent. Okay. But that doesn't mean that you will not be able to find conservative sociologists. Of course, you ask anywhere. Okay, Rui Mauro Marini. Okay. And another important person is this guy, Dos Santos. Okay. He's Brazilian as well, okay, and he's one of the major proponents of the dependency theory, okay. So you see all this idea that you cannot have the idea like cannot analyze as a separate entity, and you cannot disconnect Latin America or Spain, Brazil or from Europe. Okay, they are interconnected. That's why this laid the foundation for this is not laid the foundation. This kind of idea can be found in Annabelle Quijano as well. That you cannot analyze anything in a separated entity, and that's why they criticize European social science or American social science a lot, because they emphasize on the unit of analysis as a separate entity. These people, they are interested in what? Celia ป้าจะเอาเพจขึ้นมาได้ไงเนี่ย มันทำไมกลายเป็น Peter the Rabbit ไป
มันอัปเดตอะไรอ่ะต้องอัปเดตอะไรอ่ะ
นี่เพจมันขึ้นแล้วไง
ไม่ใช่เพจอันนั้นมันจะไม่ขึ้นเลย
เหรอโอเค Did you see this one? My writing? Hello?
Yeah.
So, European way of thinking or Anglo-American way of thinking. Right? You start with what? First, area studies. Nation as a unit of analysis. Okay. Separate entity, as I said it. Okay. They treat this object or subject as an atom. Okay. This can be called atomization. Okay. Okay, atomized entity. And of course, this kind of atomized identity, in other words, is a process of You find oneself in a nation state because nation state trying to atomize you as okay. ซีเรียไอ้ตัวนี้มันจะทำให้มันใหญ่ขึ้นมันทำไงเนี่ยไอ้ฟอนต์เนี่ย
ฟอนต์ไหน
ฟอนต์ตัวเนี้ย
ทั้งหมดเนี่ยเหรอ
ทำให้มันตัวใหญ่ขึ้นหน่อยดิไม่ใช่ให้เปิดไม่ใช่เทคอ๋อมันอยู่นี่
เนี่ย
เปลี่ยนให้มันแต่ของ
ใหญ่เท่าไหร่อ่ะใหญ่
ไม่ต้องมาใหญ่กว่านี้หน่อย
นี่เลยโน้ตอีกแล้ว
Okay, sorry. You can see this process when you get into particular direction, and especially once when you get into the ballot box, you go there alone. Okay, that's the state they want to individualize it. Okay, and apart from that, ซีเรียเอานี่ลงหน่อยเนาะ
ไหน
โอเคงั้นไปย้ายมาข้างนี้ Okay, you can see this concept has become more and more prominent to the ideology of individualism. Okay, and of course, this related to hope you remember the idea of rationality. Okay, I hope you remember we talked about this last semester. So the ideology of rationality of individualism, okay, is based on the idea of rationality. And the idea of rationality is the representative of modernity. Okay. Once rationality represent the idea of the Enlightenment. Okay, from 18th century onward. Okay, once this kind of idea become prominent, okay, you cannot separate it. Rationality and individualism cannot be separated. Okay, in the idea of the neoclassic economists. Okay, and of course, the neoclassic economists can be found in America, most of the country in this world, particularly in Thailand, where they were trained in this way. That's why they called it. I hope you remember we talked about this last semester. Methodological individualism. So once you get into this idea with the process of colonization, okay, they were not rational. For example, okay, so rationality are used. That's the way they do it. They classify the people of the non-white that they are irrational, they are backward. So rationality, so modernity, that's the way they do it. Okay. But so modernity is equal to rationality, is equal to progress. So that's the basis of the idea of rational man. มนุษย์เป็นสัตว์มีเหตุมีผล That's how they got it here. So once you talk about modernity, equal to rationality, But once is mean what? Okay. So individualism is a criteria for the West to judge you whether you are backward or modern. Okay, primitive or you're modern. Rationality